it's about trying to peel back all of that and just be where you are when you're there. So if it means getting up in the morning and having that hour of focus time that will help you parent the rest of the day or vice versa, that's the first one. It's like try your best not to just let the two blend, because every mum says this, then you just feel terrible at both things.
Hi, I'm Olivia Cummings, and on this podcast, I'd like to introduce you to the people who inspire me in my life and work as a jeweler, designer, and the founder of Cleopatra's Bling. Lucinda McKim and Lauren Treweek are the hosts of Ready or Not, a podcast dedicated to exploring the complexities of balancing motherhood and career. As close friends and family, they deep dive into conversations about the challenges and triumphs mothers face while trying to make work work. Lucinda and Lauren provide a supportive space for mothers to share their stories and strategies. We discussed these and more in the weeks before I myself am due to give birth for the first time. Cleopatra's Bling acknowledges the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the country where we work and their continuing connections to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders and all Kulin Nations people, past, present and future.
I always wondered how mums worked outside of the home. I knew a lot of people had done it, but I acted as though no one had, and I couldn't foresee a way in which someone could do both things. So I was one of those people that thought about that all throughout their 20s, even though I didn't plan on being pregnant in my 20s. Loz was the total opposite. And then Loz, I think, became pregnant, and I had this idea toiling around my mind for a few years. But originally I wanted to do a blog because I didn't want to put myself out there in podcasting. And at the time, if we're saying like 4 or 5 years back when I was thinking about it, podcasting was probably quite new for the random person just jumping on to start a podcast. So that felt a little bit scary. But then everyone was like, you can't start a blog now. No one listens or reads blogs from like the get-go now. Like, you know, you need to launch when the Design Files and Broadsheet did it. Otherwise it was sort of too late. So then Loz and I seriously talked about it. Loz was pregnant. We both were working full-time. I was starting to think about when I'd conceive, but was still about a year off, I think, at that point. Then we were just ships in the night. We were going to launch together and interview people together. Then Loz fell pregnant, put on the back burner, did a few interviews together, I think when Sienna was really young.
Yeah, it should have been like 4 months.
Yeah, and then I fell pregnant, and then it was too much for me, and maybe it was getting a bit busier for you as well, trying to navigate it all. So I put on the back burner. Long story short, when I was about the 6 months postpartum mark with my son Ray, I was like, I have to do it now or never, because otherwise I'm going to have to go back to my job. And Loz said, I can't at the moment. Were you about to have Zave? You're about to have Zave.
I was 2 weeks away from giving Zave. I'm like, this is the worst time.
Yeah.
And then about to explode. I was in your position.
Yeah. And then so Loz was like, you're just going to have to go forth. And if there's ever an opportunity to jump on, I will.
Yeah.
And so then I did that for about a year, and then was really enjoying this interview series style podcast, but felt like we were missing a bit more of just the banter of how a mum navigates a week to week. So then we thought the perfect way for Loz to come on the show is to come on as a bit more of like a sisterly conversation once a week. Loz is basically the big sister I never had. So I'm married to Loz's cousin.
Oh, it's all convoluted. We just say we're cousins because it sounds weird.
Yeah. And so then that's how Loz came to be. And then we started Witching Hour.
Cool.
Yeah.
Witching Hour, cool. So is that...
Witching Hour is more of like the conversations that you would have with your friends. So how does maternity leave
3
work?
a.m.
Yeah, at 3 a.m.
Like
how many times do you pump? Like,
it's pretty much what we voice memoed each other, but now it's in podcast form, which no one asked for.
Yeah, exactly right. It's the stuff that you actually want to talk about, but no one does. So we thought, well...
Why does no one talk about it?
Do you know what? I think up until the last year, the whole topic of motherhood and career was kind of one or the other. So you were either working full-time or you were a mum full-time. And half of like the mum conversations were at that like really pleasantry. It's so great. It's so amazing. But like I didn't feel like that.
Yeah.
And Lou didn't feel like that. And like we'd have conversations with our friends and be like, this is shit. Like who, like, why did no one tell us about breastfeeding and like how much
How
it
hard
hurt?
it is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Or like, I don't understand why I'm still like wearing a nappy like 4 weeks after I gave. Like, what is going on here?
The regular stuff that's just not talked about here.
Absolutely. So we kind of thought people obviously are having the conversations like our friends are.
Yeah.
So why aren't we having it more broadly?
And then on the other end of the spectrum, probably more like the feminism career conversations that we have about that side of things and how we're still limited in careers in a lot of ways based off what's happened in history and what we still expect of ourselves. Like there's still a lot of things that I, sitting here as a feminist who believes in equal partnerships, that I still expect of myself that I don't even realise I'm doing it.
Yeah, which isn't feminism in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm more the practical. Like, I want to understand how other people make work and like the realities of it. So I want the deeper, normal, organic conversations that like people are really having about how much effort it takes to actually
the behind the scenes.
do two of them. Yeah.
So what were some of the most valuable or surprising insights that you gained from other working mothers on that topic?
There's 3 quotes that stand out to me, and I just wrote this on a post the other day when someone asked exactly that, so I can remember it. First is Lael Stone. I nearly forgot her name, which is wild because I love her. She said, be where you are when you're there. So I run into this, and I'm yet to perfectly practice this, by the way. But the whole idea, and you will find this, especially as a business owner who I imagine can't take a very traditional parental leave where it's just laptop shut for 12 months, see you then.
Yeah.
Is
that won't happen.
That won't happen. It's impossible. You own a business. Is that you get so overwhelmed by the mum stuff when you're doing the work stuff, and you get so overwhelmed by the work stuff when you're doing the mum stuff. So I will be writing an email, Ray's pulling at my legs. If I don't get this email off, it's going to cause me anxiety and all of this stuff. It's about trying to peel back all of that and just be where you are when you're there. So if it means getting up in the morning and having that hour of focus time that will help you parent the rest of the day or vice versa. That's the first one. It's like, try your best not to just let the two blend, because every mum says this and you just feel terrible at both things.
It's like multitasking. It's proven to be.
Yeah. Trying to be a good friend while also trying to rest. All of those, there's so many different examples, but I think it really is illuminated maybe in motherhood. And then the next one, which feeds into that.
Stakes are higher.
Yeah.
You have a life.
There's a child that like wants to be fed and you're like, oh, I can't put that off the way I used to be able to put off other things.
Let me finish this spreadsheet.
Yeah. This is more important. And then I guess what feeds really well into that is that Yara Hiri, who is a psychologist, said that you really need to identify what's a plastic ball and what's a glass ball. Plastic balls can be dropped. The sink can stay messy for an hour. It's not going to matter in 10 years. But your child, for example, is screaming. They need to be serviced in that moment. So not being, I guess, held up by all those silly things that we all can't help but be held up by in life, and just think about what's important that day. Forgetting about mess. Don't worry if you haven't had a shower when you're dropping the kid off to kinder or daycare or whatever it is. Like, just drop the plastic balls and keep the glass balls lifted.
One of the last ones that I thought was great is done is better than perfect.
Oh, that's it. Well done.
You're joking. Did I read your mind?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
That's the one.
That's
Do you guys
weird.
have a podcast together?
That is crazy. No, I actually didn't know you were going to say that either. Ava Matthews said that in an episode of Ready or Not, and that's kind of the mantra that I live by. As in, you've just got to get it done. It doesn't have to be amazing, but if you've done it, you've done a better job than someone that hasn't. So
That's exactly it. I love that
how
one.
good.
And that's the best one, I reckon.
So winding back from official motherhood to childbirth, what are some of the most surprising things about childbirth that you both discovered that no one told you about?
Look, my perspective is very different from Lou's.
Yeah, we've had really
We've
different
had
births,
very
which is
different
probably a good
births.
thing.
Yeah. I heard a lot of negative conversations, if I'm honest, about childbirth.
Me too.
Yeah, okay. And I was of
I think
the
we
perspective...
were brought up in that era where everyone's just
like
oh,
terrifying.
childbirth
Yeah.
is the worst thing.
100
and then you have to
right.
unpack that when you find out you're pregnant.
You're like, shit, how
I'm
does
sure
this
this
come out?
worked.
Like, what's
Yeah.
going to go on? So I was terrified. And also, like, Lou knows this about me. I am like so scared of blood or needles. Like, I can't even, if I get a
Their
splinter in
whole
my
family
finger,
is this way, by the way.
I hyperventilate.
They're all the same.
I had a bee sting once and I genuinely thought I was going to die. Not from the pain, from the, like, imagining it in my skin. So childbirth for me, I heard all these negative stories. And what surprised me the most is that you have agency in your birth. Like, you know your body better than anybody else. You've lived in it for however many years. You've got agency. You just have to make sure you like exert that, or what's the word I'm looking for?
I think exert's beautiful.
Oh, well, you have to let somebody know what you want. So like for me, I didn't want an unplanned birth. I wanted to control as much as I could. And okay, yes, nothing's controllable. Like at the end of the day,
In your
things
case,
happen.
it was, to be fair.
But I put measures in place that made me feel more confident, more comfortable, and it really put my mind at ease. So I think there's just so much negative talk, and yes, things can go wrong that are out of your control, but you do have a certain amount of agency and you can exercise that if you need to.
And I would echo that same sentiment. I guess what was surprising about birth for me, you sort of don't know if you can do it before you've done it. And then you look back and it doesn't matter how you do it, you did it. And that's a pretty amazing thing. And maybe like the first lesson of motherhood. It's like, you just look at that thing you just did. That's amazing. Mine came a bit by surprise because my son came early, and I've had 2 pretty quick, pretty intense births. And as much as I think that the medicalised birth that person wants is great too, I definitely am proud of that. I don't know, which is tricky because I'm also really proud of Loz's birth. She planned more and she was really happy and she had really positive births and they were great. So I think I'm proud of both of us for just doing what felt right for us.
Yes.
And being really comfortable about that. So there's a lot of people that can be really toxic in the way of you have to do it naturally. And there can be people that are really toxic in the way of why wouldn't you use modern medicine? And I'm really proud that we have had total opposite births and total different plans going into birth, and that we can both sit here and be like, that's amazing what you did and that's amazing what I did. And I don't know if that really answered your question, but that's what's coming to mind right now.
Yeah. Well, I think feminism is not judging the way other women do it.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like stay-at-home mum versus full-time working mum. It's like another version of that conversation.
Think the outcome is the same, right? Like everyone wants the same outcome.
Yes.
Everyone wants a healthy baby, and everybody is doing mum. Yes, and everybody is doing their best to provide that. Like no one is going into it being like, I'm stuck on this route and I don't care if my baby doesn't come out right. No. You're going to do what
ever didn't come out.
Exactly. You're going to do what's required.
Yeah.
But the negativity and the like terrifying stories around it, I like sometimes I wonder like, where are the positive ones? Like who had a great experience? Like I want to learn from them.
I have a few friends who had really good experiences and they shared it with me, and I felt relieved by that.
Yes, absolutely.
One of my friends was like, oh, she just had her 3rd under 3.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So she obviously, like, something's gone right.
Yeah.
But she said to me, I love giving birth. And
I love giving birth.
And you have to surround yourself with that, because it's all well and good to be informed of what can happen and what decisions you might need to make if things aren't progressing in the way that you hoped.
Yeah.
But besides that, you need to just not even think about the negatives. You need to go in there in your power, because it's one of the most vulnerable things you'll ever do, but it's also one of the most powerful things you'll ever do.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I think what you said about agency caught my attention.
Yeah.
Because I watched this documentary. I think it's called Birth Time.
Yes, I've never watched that.
It's very good.
Yeah.
And the main takeaway from that was the women who had post-birth trauma, the women who felt that their agency was taken away.
Yes.
It didn't actually matter how it unfolded.
Yes.
If it was C-section, forceps, whatever. As long as they felt they had agency, they felt they could digest what had happened.
Yes.
More than the women who felt that they weren't communicated with properly or given
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
their voice.
We actually shared my birth story on Ready or Not, and Loz interviewed me for that. And my son came 4 weeks early, so I always had in the back of my head that Posey might come early.
First or second?
So first came early,
Oh, wow.
but then second started to look like she was coming early. I went into this labour. I had some sort of bacteria in my vagina. It's a long story, but basically I started having contractions, and then when I was in there, it started to look like things were really happening. So they got me into a birth suite, and her heart rate started dropping, which, by the way, is very common and sounds really scary, but can be a very common thing. In that moment, at like 35 weeks and 3 days, they wanted to break my waters. And in that moment, I was like, wait, everything's okay though, right? Because they're like, her heart rate's dropped, we just need to get her out. And I said, no, you're not getting her out like that. I exercise my agency, which also comes from hindsight, I think. And we spoke about this and how important it is, because then she got to 37 and 6, was healthy and came out just the way she was meant to.
Yeah.
So it's really important
Yeah.
because otherwise you feel like someone's doing something to you,
And
which is not how you want to enter motherhood.
And I also think it's important for your partner or whoever that support person is to know what that looks like. Because in moments where you're like really deep within yourself, working to get that baby out, you might not have the mental capacity to be like, this is what I want or this is what I need now. But if you've already, like, you just need like a little signal to each other to be like, I need help in this area. We've discussed it.
Yeah.
It's your time to like shine.
It's their time for agency.
Yeah.
Definitely. And that also makes them feel more involved, I think.
Absolutely.
Because you're doing this crazy
For sure.
marathon.
Exactly. You're
I
doing
still
the
would
work.
like to watch my partner give birth. I'm disappointed that I'll never be able to, because I'd like to understand what it feels like to be the other person.
I think from what I've noticed, I've gone down a deep rabbit hole of watching birth.
Yes.
Like documentaries and like One Born Every Minute and all that stuff.
Yes.
Obsessed. And what I've noticed is the women come out of it more shocked. Just a bit like,
What just happened?
yeah. And the men are the ones crying because
Yeah.
they've seen it all without the heightened
Yeah.
Yeah.
hormone.
Yeah. Because it
hormonal,
is pretty crazy.
spike.
It's crazy.
Yeah, they probably watch the
genuinely.
journey more, whereas we don't. Like, it sort of it feels
You're
like
more
it's
in
just
your
happening.
head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas they're just watching it happen slowly. Whereas for us, it's like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah. Do you know Bobby Clark, the artist?
Yes,
She
I just
had her-
interviewed her recently.
you
I
did.
love
Oh,
her.
she's had her baby a week ago.
Oh, yes.
And she's like, oh, her partner is super, super emo, like very emotional about it. And
Yeah.
she's like, I haven't even cried yet.
Yeah.
So she's like,
There's always one. There's always one that's
In the
more like,
partnership.
although she's super emotional person, so she's just like still in the like
when's it coming?
reeling. She's like, it'll come.
Yeah, it will. It does.
Oh, it'll come.
Yeah, it'll come. I want to talk about postpartum recovery because that's something I think I've looked in, because I do TCM every week. So I've got
Yep.
acupuncture and like a whole like postpartum plan.
Yes.
And I wanted to hear your thoughts on, you know, how people can plan well for postpartum, and also your thoughts on the notion of the sort of the month confinement
Yep.
from a personal perspective, not a like
Yeah.
what you would do,
Yep.
if you had your time again.
I was asked recently what I would do again first time postpartum. And I think I was lucky that quite a few of my friends came before me, so I knew to plan for it.
Yeah.
So, for example, I had all of my girlfriends as my gift put in for a Golden Month voucher. I don't think they run this program that they did, but it was basically a month of food every meal, and it was a weekly like massage or acupuncture.
Yeah, they don't do it anymore.
Yeah, they don't do it
'Cause I remember
anymore.
looking at it for Zave.
Yeah. And that was just incredible. And I am a big like go slow, take it easy, get every resource in that you can either get from family or financially plan for. Very big on it. This time around, I had a doula weekly for 4 weeks. The interesting thing about me is I'm very big on confinement and slowing down in those early days, but I do also feel the need to get out. So the push-pull of that really gets me. Is like part of me wants to go out for that wine at 2 weeks postpartum just for an hour with my girlfriends, but part of me doesn't want to get off the bed. So I found the push-pull of that very hard, but it was very slow days for me. The second time around was a bit trickier because we also had the podcast. Loz made things as easy as possible for me, so I wasn't doing much, but I did return to a small amount of work very quickly, which might be your experience, I'm not sure. So I think for me, the conversations to have with your partner are the big one, because then from there you can start to plan out who's in your village, who's in your tiers of support. We actually have a postpartum planning guide that talks about having your different tiers of support. So there's your very close network, there's your slightly wider network, and then there's your professional network of professionals in terms of if you need a lactation consultant or things like that. So I think the main things are to really have the conversation with whoever is in your immediate network first, and then start to plan out from there. So financially, what's viable, familiarly, what's viable with your family, who do you have around? And then from there, I feel like you start to build out what you need. What would you add to that?
Look, I would say first time around, if I'm honest, postpartum for me was non-existent. I didn't even think about it. I was so focused on the birth and like all the cute little baby clothes and like the accessories and the pram. Like I had put that pram together 6 months before my child was born. I was like, I don't want to make sure I can get the capsule in the pram. All this like
That's important
Weird
though, practicing how to use
Okay,
things
yes.
because when they're screaming, you need to know.
Yeah, you do need to know. But
Sorry.
you do need to know. Like how some of these prams, like how the fuck do you flip them down?
They're like four-wheel drive.
Yeah, I'm like,
I'm
come
a
on,
smart
hurry up.
person that can hold a job, but
Yeah, I
I
was like,
cannot
"Get this
put down
down."
this pram.
But first time around with Sienna, I was like, whatever. Like postpartum, man. Like, what do I need to do? Make a couple snacks. I was
Loz is a
wrong.
highly productive person too. Like I'm productive, she's next level.
Yeah,
So she's
so-
like a high functioner.
Yes. So second time around, I really invested in it and it made an enormous, enormous difference to my recovery. So when you say about the confinement, if you can, if you have the finances to do it, if you have the willpower to do it, if your personality is a personality that feels comfortable lying flat and having people surround you and help you, do it.
Oh, it'll be a challenge for me. But
I think
I'll do
mentally
it. No,
it might
yeah.
be a challenge, but physically
Yeah.
your body is going to thank you on
Yeah.
so many levels.
Yeah.
Your recovery will most likely be easier, quicker. There's just so many benefits if you can do it.
And then I think also leaning in and accepting when it is driving you a bit mad is okay too. So getting out
Yeah.
for that hour when it's not feeling good. I mean, I'm strict on recovery in that first week, especially in terms of
yeah.
like
I'll be
physically doing
horizontal.
nothing because your
definitely
body
will.
literally needs that. But then I'm okay with, I'd get annoyed at myself for then being busy in little pockets. But then I was like, but you want to do this and then you can go back and lie down all day. So I think it's like leaning in to
Yeah.
whatever you're feeling because you can also you can either feel really calm in postpartum or sometimes your mind can feel really chaotic and you need to like get out and have that coffee with your girlfriend. So
The fact that you're already talking about it,
Yeah,
Oh, we've
you
got
feel
quite a big
so
plan.
prepared.
you are
Listening
so
to your
prepared.
podcast, I'm like, you know what's up.
Yeah.
You know what you're doing.
Well, I think it's because I started research early, which
Yeah.
then snowballed
Yeah.
into certain like topics about post-birth
It's
recovery.
so, and you
And
know
I was
what?
like,
It's such a
oh.
long time. I think people forget this.
Yeah.
Like you're
It really
pregnant
is
for
forever.
like 10 months, really.
I don't remember myself
Postpartum
like my
is for
body.
life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're officially postpartum 2 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hormonally.
Don't they say it's up to 7?
Something to do with sleep, I think, is 7. Like the
cool.
recovery of sleep.
Sorry, invest in it. That's my
Welcome to the
advice.
next 7 years of your life.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
And I think you're comfortable talking about this because you have enough other episodes. I was listening to how you lost your dad
Yeah.
and thinking that that's such a transformative experience that might feel a little bit like motherhood in a way. Do you think that maybe prepared you a little bit more for these sorts of things?
I actually do because when my dad died, we did palliative care at home.
Okay.
So I think
Yeah.
that made me think a lot more about exiting life and entering life.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, because I became like weirdly obsessed with end of life care after he
that's
died.
not weird at all.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
because
so
I'd
fair.
witnessed it and it was like all of us, it was a full-time job for a week.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, how do people just die on their own? Number
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
But then I was thinking like, well, if you need that much end of life care, and my dad was like, it was quite easy in that he didn't really suffer a lot at the end. It was like he went to sleep slowly.
Yeah.
So it's not like we needed to do crazy interventions or anything, but we were still around the clock. You
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
9 to
well,
5.
then you're prepared, right?
Well, exactly. So that led, and then 9 months later I was pregnant.
Wow.
So I think that topic definitely led me to think more about those transitional periods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think don't get spoken about in the West.
Yes.
But then also practicing Chinese medicine every week, they're a lot more on it.
Yes. So much more. on
Like
that.
the West is like this whole like bounce back toxic
And it's
culture.
so yuck.
I'm
It's
like,
so
guys,
yuck. Yeah.
I'm not bouncing back.
It's so interesting you say that. I was on, I can't even remember whose Instagram account. And I know who it was. It's Chloe Chapman, who's married to, Chloe Fisher, who's with the
married to-
DJ.
yeah.
What's his name? Paul
Paul.
Fisher, the DJ.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And somehow stumbled on a reel that she put up. She was having some time out for herself with her girlfriends. She has maybe a 2-month-old, I'm assuming. And all the comments, one person wrote, good on you for taking some time out. Mothers deserve time out. Every single other comment was, wow, you look great in your bikinis. And I just thought, fuck, we really haven't gotten any further in the West with that stuff. Like one person out of hundreds wrote that. Everyone else just cared that she was in her bikinis.
Yeah. This is a depiction
Yeah.
of women,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
No, I think that's like quite shocking to me.
Yeah.
2020, almost
Yeah.
5.
So you're right. Like when it comes to Western culture, we just still don't honour what a mum needs.
Yeah. I mean, if the body is being objectified to that level postpartum, I think
Yeah.
it shows
We all need to go easy on ourselves.
there's a big problem.
Yeah.
you know?
100%.
To answer your question, it definitely influenced the prep as well for birth. And also like seeing how the system works, because we were in the system with my dad.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Obviously, but then obviously like how you deviate from things and listen to your intuition, I think was something I learned in that experience as well.
And advocating for someone.
Yeah, and obviously at the end, like Dad he couldn't speak. Yeah. So even in that moment, you're like, what will make him more comfortable? And I guess it's the same in birth.
Yeah, it is.
You know, you've got to think about, you'll have people telling you the policies,
Yep.
what they want you to do.
Yes.
And then you have to be like, is this right for me?
Absolutely.
So I think it was a good lesson.
Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for asking. So so what about mothers who are anxious going into childbirth and postpartum? What would be your, like if you could sit down with someone who said, I'm really anxious, I'm scared about giving birth, I'm scared about what's to come afterwards.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys felt like that. I don't personally feel anxious about childbirth.
I mean, I felt super anxious, hence the reason I was like, I need to put parameters in place to make sure I feel somewhat in control or like alleviate that lack of unknown.
Do you know what, for me it's the opposite, because I've had to do my career in such a structured way that now I'm kind of like, I love this lack of control.
Yeah, that's really
which is really
interesting.
weird.
Yeah.
For me, it was probably not so much the control thing. It was the nerves around the unknown. But I also found ignorance to be bliss in that way. So I was like, I know this is going to hurt. I know this is going to be a bit challenging. People have done it before me. Surrounded myself with the positive birth stories on the likes of Australian Birth Stories and podcasts like that. And I guess just spoke in depth with friends, but really focused on the positive. The funny thing about that is, though, I wonder then if mums get to postpartum and feel lonely in some ways, because there are things that are really, really fucking hard about postpartum. I don't know how you prepare the pregnant person for that, though, because I want them to go into birth in the most oxytocin state possible and like feel really happy and warm and excited and empowered. The paradox on the other end of that is sometimes I feel like mums and parents can be ill-prepared for the hard parts. Do you agree with that, Loz?
I think it depends who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
Like it depends what your friendship network is like, or what the people that you talk to on a daily basis are like. Or
But if you had someone who was feeling a bit nervous, how would you talk to them about postpartum in terms of trying to make them aware of the realities versus also trying to keep them quite happy and powerful about it?
Well, I think I would be a realist. I would tell them what the amazing things are, and then also the things to look out for or help prepare yourself for, and be like, here's some resources. They're factual. They're not talking about the, you know.
Like you're not alone, essentially.
Yeah, you're not alone. It's going to be, it will be hopefully okay. And if it's not okay, there's so many resources out there that are going to help you and support you
To be okay.
to be okay.
Yeah.
Like it's okay if your birth is not what you envisioned and your postpartum is difficult. Many people have been through it before, and there is going to be light at the end of the tunnel, and we're going to figure out, like, you've got an amazing support network. We'll all help you, like rally around you and make you feel maybe not back to your old self, but like supported in a way that's going to be okay. Like
I think
You
it's
just
a
made me
shame.
feel better about it,
You
even
know?
though I'm not pregnant.
it's
Even
such a
I think
hard
it's the
one.
shame factor as well.
About asking for help.
That
or-
in the West, I don't think anyone's good at
No,
Yeah.
still terrible at it.
asking for help, but also people don't necessarily volunteer help in the same way as like traditional cultures, I think.
Yes.
So then asking for help feels like a bigger thing.
Totally.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you know
also
what I mean? So-
true.
We're really lucky. I live in Rye on the Mornington Peninsula, and we have such a tight community that will, like, you know, if the dad can't get home from work by a certain time, another mum will take the baby, and we do meal trains obsessively for everyone. And it really has made me realise how uncomfortable I still am asking for help, because I've been so well supported and I want to give. Like, I dropped off 2 meals to two different pregnant people the other day. And they're like, how could you do that for me? You have 2 young kids. I'm like, no, I want to. But if someone did that for me, I still probably wouldn't feel comfortable, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I know, it's interesting, isn't it?
It is a tricky one.
I think it's this not to get too deep or like into sociology or anything, but I think it's like that late capitalism. You're only achieving if you're doing it on your own.
Yes.
mentality.
Self-starter, like we're told to be a self-starter at work. That's what is like the measure of success that you've known through your
Over
20s.
teamwork.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now everyone's
Yeah.
trying to come back on that and be like, now we're teamwork.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Now
then you get
everyone
to
move into my house and look after me.
You get to like 10 months postpartum. They're like, what's your return to work plan? When are
Yeah.
you going back? All right, village is gone now.
Yeah,
See ya.
yeah, yeah.
Bye.
Get back to the
Yeah.
office.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I learned that with my dad, actually.
Oh, that's really fascinating. Another way of like, our friendship group has gone through a grief recently,
Yes.
and it's felt like I can't speak for the person who's more deep in the grief, but it has felt like a weird postpartum period.
Oh,
and my friends have said that too. Like, it feels like some sort of version of postpartum. So I can
100%.
totally imagine that for you, it would be the same.
Oh, it was like, I don't even really remember it. I was in
Yeah.
such a haze.
And
Yeah.
then imagine a few months in being like, people expect me to do X, Y, and Z, but I'm still in the deep depths of this.
I think it's very similar in that respect. Like
Yeah.
you start getting people, people don't check in as much because obviously life
Yeah.
just moves
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Which is fair enough, and you don't blame them for that, but you
Yes.
sort of feel like it's hard to then be like, hey guys, I'm still
Yeah.
It's
still on
It's
this.
weird you said that. So I work for a charity called Very Special Kids, and as part of that, it's about end of life palliative care for children.
Oh,
So
I don't know how you do that.
I absolutely like thrive off it. I love it. It puts your whole life, honestly, in perspective. But what I found so interesting is when they did grief training, so you go through like all these trainings to understand like how it works. They actually said that parents grieve the most in those like 6 months afterwards because it's like they're used to being surrounded by like all of these people,
Yeah.
like all of this care, like their lives are actually quite busy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when that child passes, their lives become unbelievably quiet. So for that
Oh,
first 6 months, it's like rallying, like, are you okay?
Yeah.
What's
People
happening?
are
I've got
literally
food, rah, rah, rah.
sitting in with you.
And then all of a sudden life goes on, right? Well,
that's
it
what
continues on.
happens.
And then it
Yeah.
gets very quiet. And then you're left to
With
sit
the
there.
grief.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The shock wears
Yeah.
off. My mum's friend is a grief counsellor, and she said the second year
Oh, it'd be so difficult.
is when your shock wears off because you're kind of in
Yes.
this haze where you're just like, you almost feel like you're bouncing on the
Yeah.
earth.
Yes.
Nothing can really
Yeah.
touch you.
Yeah.
I
And then the
imagine it. You're on
second year-
autopilot, I imagine.
Yeah,
You're
and then the
living your own life.
Exactly, and I can imagine it's the same when the high of the baby wears off, and then you're like, now I've got this child
Yeah.
Exactly.
to look after.
Yes.
That's right.
With all the ups and downs. So
Yeah.
I guess in a way it's good that I had them both close together. I mean, it's been like turbo.
Oh,
But
hectic for you.
yeah.
so much to process. But if there's any silver lining I can give you, I think it's prepared you beautifully for
wisdom.
being a
Yes.
mum. Like,
Yeah.
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 I definitely didn't
wish you didn't have to
glorify-
go through that. But
Yeah, thank you. And what about the transition to work, back to work?
Yeah.
Because that, I mean, I'm obviously asking this for me.
Yeah.
But also just in general, because I think that's something that, you know, you plan for everything and then transitioning into maternity leave, but then you don't really think about transitioning back.
Yeah, until you have to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Your case is like slightly different because you work for yourself. You have this amazing brand. So, I mean, my instinct and gut would say that your mind is still going to be like, have I done this? Have I done that? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? So you don't fully switch off. So like, I mean, you don't fully switch off really when you're in corporate either because you kind of think to yourself, well,
What's
actually,
happening there?
I did a bit. But,
Yeah, I switched off pretty well actually for the 6 months.
but I did a little bit. But it is weird when you return to work. I think the actual anxiousness of the thought of returning is more anxiety provoking than going.
I agree. The lead up to a lot of things. That's like in motherhood too. If your baby is in your room and then like I've kept my babies in my room for quite a while before I moved them out. And the idea of moving them out of my room always made me more sad. And then I actually did it. I was like, oh, still seeing you a few times a
Yeah.
night. This is actually not that bad. And I reckon it's the same with
few
returning
times.
to
I
work.
see you every
Yeah,
hour.
yeah. We'll catch
Hey,
up
me
soon.
again.
Yeah. And I think it's similar.
Yeah, it is. Like when you go back to work, it's the unknown of, will my job still be the same? Is everyone going to remember me?
How will childcare go?
How will childcare go? Am I going to be on time? Like, what if my kids eat? There's all these questions that run through your mind, right?
Of course.
But the realities are too, and it's difficult to put it in perspective at the time, but 50% of the population is women. Let's just say 50% of that 50% have kids. Like, you are not unique.
Yeah, you're not
Someone
alone.
has done it before. And really, like, if you have a supportive manager, you're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
As in,
Yeah.
they're gonna know that this shit happens. Like, I can guarantee those first 2 weeks that you return to work, your kid is gonna be sick. It's like they know.
Yeah.
They know. They look at you in the eye and they're like,
So you're not leaving
you're-
yet.
I'm gonna fuck up your first week.
Yeah. No, you're not
It
going to
happens
work.
to everyone.
Have the best time for an
Yeah.
hour. I will see you soon.
See you in
I
an
can
hour.
probably speak a little bit more to, firstly, what I would say about advice on it is I think people should treat their return to paid work more like their postpartum in terms of planning.
Yeah.
Like I think the same level of planning should go into it to make it easier. So that's the conversations with your partner. That's what sort of food, like
Who's going to pick up your kid if they're
Are you
sick?
both bulk cooking in the lead up or whatever it is? Or maybe are you engaging, like you can't normally afford a cleaner, but maybe weekly for a month you can, or things like that, just to make your life easier the way you do in the early postpartum. I think that should be the approach we take. I can speak a little bit more to your experience as a freelancer, not as a owner of a very beautiful and impressive business. But as a freelancer, I recently took on an 8-part podcast series project as the producer. Posey had no formal care. I have a partner who does as much as he can, and he's great. And days that I'd have to be filming, he looked after her. But what I forgot was there was a lot of fucking work, I hope you don't mind swearing on this show, that would need to be done in and around that. It wasn't just recording days. It was all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And I was naive to think about how that would run with a 6-month-old. So my biggest advice for someone that is maybe a business owner or a freelancer, works for themselves in any capacity,
Overplan.
is that overplan in that regard and have care in place. You can sort of fumble your way through it until they're about 6 months, don't you think?
Yeah,
because
but
they
then you
sleep
have
a bit more.
You have to have a backup plan.
But then you need, I
Yeah.
would say after that period, when they start to wake up to the world and demand more of you, depending on the type of baby. That's when I was naive, even with a podcast about this very topic, to think that it would all work. She'd be crying for me while I'm trying to respond to an email or review and edit, and it was a shit show. Do I regret it? No, it all worked out. Great project, learnt a lot. But I would just say over-prepare in that sense as well. So think about it like your postpartum.
Yeah. And I would say if you are a corporate employee like myself, use your keep in touch days. So you have 10, you're entitled to 10 paid keep in touch days. All we need to do to access them is like email your manager or email HR, and you get paid for a full day back at work, regardless of whether you do 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. It's up to you. You can take your baby if you like, but it allows you to re-enter into the workplace without feeling like it's just going to hit you all at once.
Ton of bricks.
Yeah.
What I loved most about Loz's advice on that is, we've spoken about this before on the show, is that it's not even also just to sort of reignite, I guess, your brain or your skills or whatever you think you lost when you're in postpartum. It's about understanding who's left, who's there, how
the
roles have
structure.
changed and all of that. So I thought that was a really good tip for anyone listening that is more corporate.
Yeah. And just being like, I'm here. I'm
Dismantle
Loz.
the anxiety
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Easing back into it.
Yeah. Because no one's going to forget about you. Like, yeah, it's been a year. Life goes on. But they're not going to be like, oh, who's
They're
that
probably
person
missing you.
that's never...
They're missing you.
You know, they know that the work that you've done, I think it's more mentally for you. It can feel like a real challenge re-entering when your life has predominantly been like baby talk, baby sensory, tummy time, like all of those things that you're like, wow, life has changed a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Probably also just like that feeling redundant in a way.
Yeah.
And 6 months isn't actually a lot of time.
It's not
No.
long at all, but you'd be surprised how many people think the entire world has changed. And your
yes.
workplace may have, like, you may have a new manager, there may have been a structural change, but it doesn't mean that the skills that you had 6 months ago are gone.
Yeah.
It just means
Yeah.
that they're sitting there waiting to be used again, and you're going to kill it.
Interesting. What were your, this is a completely different topic. What were your favourite postpartum snacks?
God, I've got so many.
Oh, God, I've got so many too. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. Okay, this is unpopular.
Is this unhealthy?
No, I didn't like the Franjo's biscuits,
What are they?
the booby lactation biscuits, the yeast ones.
Okay.
Okay,
What
didn't
do you
rate
think?
those.
Yeah.
The Kira Rumble Beauty Bites.
Oh, they're great.
Delicious. Twix also. Also delicious. I made quite a lot of like muesli slices, which surprised myself. And I actually had a doula, and her food
got a
was
doula.
off the charts.
Doula food is the best food. My favourite cookbook, because my doula cooked from it so much, is Village for Mama.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so good. I make this seeded loaf every week pretty much. And that's like how I incorporate postpartum planning into like navigating motherhood and paid work, is I make these things like that I can grab and go, put in the oven in the morning, grab and go on like my work day. So this seeded loaf from that cookbook is brilliant. There's a million things in that cookbook I love. Also on the topic of Twix, there's this Twix slice recipe.
I've had that also.
I'm going to send it to you. It's by a doula called
incredible.
Hold the Mother on Instagram. I make it nearly every week. It lasts like 2 days. Hayes likes
It's
it, which
so
was so
good.
disappointing. He doesn't normally like my healthy versions of
Oh,
desserts.
Alex likes all
And
my
it was
postpartum
really,
snacks
oh,
too.
it
does
was
he?
so disappointing. But I liked the Cure Rumble products too. And what else? Just all the doula cookbooks are the best. They're so good.
Anything that's like a little one-handed snack.
Yeah.
Mum started practicing postpartum snacks for me.
Oh, bless her.
I
What
know.
a dream.
She's really sweet. So she got dates, cut them open, stuffed them with
Peanut butter or
butter.
something.
and then
That's
dunked
actually
them in
the best.
chocolate.
Oh, no.
And a bit of salt.
And then I caught
Delightful.
Alex eating them. And I was like,
No, this is
postpartum
for
Never
me.
mind.
We're softening my cervix.
Yeah.
We're not looking at you right now.
No. And I was like, Mum, you're going to have to double the...
Yeah,
The
that's
quantity.
the
Yeah, they're
best. A
good.
bit of salt or coconut on top. My friend made me those, and they were just unbelievable.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to be really
And anything, I feel like you
demolishing
know
them.
this, but anything warming and nourishing and
Yeah,
ginger and all that stuff,
100%.
heaven.
Chinese medicine girly.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Broth,
None of your cold
congee.
food.
Yes.
Yeah.
No cold. At least we'll be coming into spring though.
Congee, the Elan House of Wellness range is
Their
awesome
banana
too.
bread,
Beautiful.
best I've eaten.
And she has really good rice pudding type products that are great. And all you do is add the wet ingredients, put it in.
They're
Mum
really
comes
good.
over, does that while you're feeding the baby or having a shower. It's heaven.
Cool. Well, I guess this conversation will be continued once I've had the baby.
Yes.
So
Yes.
just on your podcast.
Yes,
Yes.
please. We want to have you on.
I'll be there.
Yeah.
What is your birth narrative? Like, what are you wanting? I'm not going to say plan because there's no such thing as a plan, man. It changes. But what's a narrative that you've told yourself?
Basically that like I'm capable of it.
Yep.
That there'll be moments of like crisis of confidence. So in those moments I'll need Alex and my support team to like give me a little pep talk, but that ultimately I'm capable of it. And even though I would like as little intervention as possible,
Yep.
I'm not going to deprive myself if in the moment, you know, I'm struggling and I'm tired and I need to sleep,
Yep.
you know, and they say a little shot of morphine or something would help you get into the right headspace.
Yeah.
I'm not like draconian about it.
Yes,
So I'm not
that's
like,
how I went into it. I
Yeah.
wanted natural births, which I sort of hate that word, but I wanted to go for that, and I did. It worked out, but I was also open-minded to that. You know, this might not happen. Things might change. I want you to give yourself some mantras because I loved them.
No, I got the positive affirmations.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So my favourite my favourite three were. When I would say I can't do this, my partner would say you can and you are. The second one was that you're going to meet your son or your daughter soon. And my favourite one came from Pop That Mama, who's a bit of a birth doula-y chick online, but like more of education. I'm definitely underselling what she does, is you're a badass. That was my favourite. You are a badass. And he would tell me that while I was fucking screaming, and it helped.
yeah, I think like that will help me. And then just... I have a really funny one. My friends told me a couple of weeks ago, her partner was saying, you're doing amazing. And then she just goes,
Shut up.
Stop telling me I'm doing amazing.
This would be me.
That's the only thing is
With
like
Ryan.
they need to be careful with how much they talk because you don't want it all the time. Cold cloths as well. Cold cloths, drinks running and giving you the affirmations when you need them is my best tips for a partner.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, you do.
It's
I
so
couldn't
funny.
handle that. I couldn't handle that with Ray.
Yeah.
He said to me years ago, oh, it'd be great if we could run together. I was like, run together? Like, have we met? Sorry.
I'm not
Ain't
going for a run with
But I was
you.
like, all right, I'll try. And he's like, come on, you can do it. And I was like,
Shut the fuck up.
like the first kilometre. And then I was like, shut. I'm like, I can't do it.
And I'm stopping.
I'm sick of you running backwards, yelling encouragement at me, you freak.
Toxic
It was
positivity.
worse. It was so bad.
Yeah, no, some things you just have to do on your own.
Running is one of them.
I always look at runners who talk while they run.
Oh my God, on this, I can't believe you just
I'm
said
like,
this. Okay,
why?
Olivia, I've just started a runners.
Breathe.
I've just started doing a runners club. Did I tell you this?
No, you're
It's like-
meditating and running. Who
Okay,
are
wait,
you?
sorry. This is like the third week that I've done it. This will be the fourth week
shook.
that I've missed one. I know. So I told my husband I'm doing this running club, and he laughed. He was like, "Babe, you got to be able to run to join a runners club." I'm like, no.
you
It's like
don't.
for beginners. It's fine. Anyway, I joined with a girlfriend, and the first time we did it, she was like, "So what'd you get out?" And I was like,
my
"Oh,"
God.
like, and then eventually I
I'm
said,
gonna
"Stop
faint."
talking."
Yeah, I can't talk.
breathe.
That's
Nah.
why when anyone suggests going for a run, I'm like, it's awkward if we're silent because I'm just standing next to a friend and not talking to them.
It's fine.
Or it's awkward if you're talking
I don't
because
mind the
I
silence,
can't talk.
but I'm like, every time you talk,
Yeah,
you
nah.
interrupt my breath.
Yeah.
I am already struggling
This
here.
is hard.
Please don't speak to
Yeah.
me.
This is now a running podcast.
I definitely don't want to run and talk.
Yeah.
I mean,
you
I
are not
can't-
running
I'm-
for the
I'm-
foreseeable future.
I'm waddling. I waddle the block. Oh my gosh, that's funny. Where do we find you on socials and for your lovely podcast?
Yeah, on socials, we are readyornot.pod, so follow along. And on our podcast, it's exactly the same. So Ready or Not is our primary podcast with Lou, who interviews a number of amazing women each week. And then we have our secondary podcast, which is Witching Hour, which is myself and Lou, who just talk absolute rubbish like we just have now.
Yeah.
And our third podcast is called Tits and Tricks. And it is a short, sharp, practical podcast under 10 minutes that tells you all the dying questions that you've got about a specific topic.
Like
Okay,
it's
cool.
sort of like
Stuff I'm Googling now.
Exactly
just
right.
random stuff about returning to paid work and motherhood. So they're all on the same channel.
Okay.
But we release 3 episodes a week.
Stunning.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, lovely to meet you both.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Sorry that we took that so off topic,
No,
but
it's-
love
we need a
chatting
laugh.
to you.
Need a laugh. We'll see you soon on your podcast.
Right.
Yes.
See you there.
Yeah.
See you there. This was the Cleopatra's Bling podcast with me, Olivia Cummings. Next time,
decorative arts, I suppose is the word I'm looking for, is such a part of the culture that I'm from. Embroidery, like hair as a decorative arts practice, and scarification is like a really, really big one that's also dying.
until then, stay curious.